What if the creature you rescued wasn't just rare, but royal? When station medic Lennon Miles finds a wounded beast on the edge of space, he saves it without knowing it's the soul-bound companion of a powerful noble, one being hunted by traitors. Now, caught between loyalty and danger, one quiet healer holds the key to a galactic uprising, a secret bond, a hidden heir, a choice that could change the stars. This is the bond beyond stars, and it all begins with a single act of kindness. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Lennon Miles had never seen anything like it. The creature lay motionless near the edge of the docking platform, its fur soaked with blood and its breathing shallow. The cold metal of Auralis Point's outer ring had never been kind to strays, but this wasn't just any animal. Its coat shimmered in soft shades of silver and blue under the low lights, marred only by deep wounds that bled too slowly. Lennon, a quiet man who spent more time with scanners than people, crouched beside it and reached out. The creature didn't flinch. Its eyes were closed, but there was a faint twitch in its ear, as if it had heard him. He moved quickly. Cradling the creature in his arms, he carried it through a back corridor away from the main deck. Its body was heavier than he expected, dense, strong, its long claws pressed against his uniform, not in defense, but as though it was holding on. Lennon didn't speak. There was no one around anyway. Just the soft hum of station lights and the occasional buzz from flickering panels. As he reached his clinic, a converted cargo bay barely recognized by station officials, he triggered the door with a voice command and laid the creature on the only examination table he had that wasn't covered in repair tools or half-finished notes. He activated the medical scanner and a soft blue glow passed over the creature's body. Lennon's fingers worked automatically, cleaning the wounds, applying pressure, and sealing the deepest cuts with healing gel. The scanner hummed quietly, then gave a result that made him pause. Unknown species. Closest match, sentient classification, probability 82%. Lennon frowned. That couldn't be right. He checked the readings again. The creature's skeletal structure was far too advanced, with neural pathways more intricate than any wild animal he had ever studied. Its organs were layered in ways that suggested complexity and, more alarmingly, intelligence. As he leaned closer, the creature's eyes snapped open. Golden and wide, they met his gaze with unexpected clarity. Lennon froze. The eyes didn't show panic or confusion. They showed something far worse. Awareness. It hissed softly, revealing sharp teeth, but made no move to attack. Instead, it stared, as if trying to figure out what he was. Lennon raised both hands slowly and spoke in a calm voice. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm trying to help." The creature blinked once, and though its breathing remained shallow, its body relaxed slightly. Lennon reached for a mild sedative. Not enough to knock it out, just enough to dull the pain. The injection went in without resistance. Moments later, the creature let out a soft, almost human sound of relief, and rested its head back on the table. Lennon stood there for a long time, staring at it. His training told him to report it. His instincts told him to wait. The scanner continued its work. Lennon began reviewing the data it collected: dual hearts, multi-layered musculature, and a subtle but undeniable echo in its DNA. A code fragment tagged with a diplomatic signature, something he hadn't seen since his academy days. It was a marker used in old royal records. Could this creature be connected to one of the noble houses? And if so, why was it here? Wounded, abandoned, left to die on a forgotten station at the edge of known space. His thoughts were interrupted by the chime of an incoming transmission. Lennon stepped away from the table and tapped the wall console. The face of Commander Draven appeared, voice crisp and urgent. "All personnel, report to your designated areas. Emergency docking has been approved for a royal transport ship. Medical staff prepare for priority clearance. Repeat. Diplomatic vessel arriving in less than 1 hour." Lennon's stomach turned. That couldn't be a coincidence. He turned back to the table. The creature, whatever it was now asleep, the sedative doing its job. But its breathing had grown steadier. It was healing, And he was certain now. This arrival wasn't random. Someone was coming, and they were looking for this. Lennon made a choice. He tapped the side of the table. The recovery chamber sealed around the creature, shielding it with a soft hiss. Then he activated the clinic's lockdown protocol. Only he would have access now. Not even the station's main system could override it. He looked down at the sleeping form inside, feeling something strange stirring in his chest. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about something deeper, maybe even personal. "You'll be safe," he whispered, "no matter what they're here for." Outside, the station lights dimmed as the royal vessel approached. In the silence of his clinic, Lennon stood alone, watching over a creature no one yet understood, but someone clearly wanted. And he knew this was only the beginning. The station's main deck buzzed with nervous activity as the royal vessel docked. Lennon kept his head down, staying close to the wall, a small medkit slung over his shoulder as a cover. The rest of the staff stood stiffly in rows, hands behind their backs, eyes forward. No one knew exactly why a royal ship would visit a backwater station like Unveils Point. Whispers of politics, missing cargo, and hidden motives passed quietly from one technician to another. Lennon said nothing. His thoughts were on the creature still asleep in his locked recovery chamber, hidden from every scan and shielded from outside access. He didn't know what was about to walk through those docking doors, but he had a growing feeling that whatever it was connected to the silent being he'd found bleeding and broken. The docking bridge hissed as the pressurized corridor linked. A low chime followed, and then the doors opened. Out stepped 3 guards in dark armor, feline in structure but walking upright like humans. Behind them, a figure emerged wearing a deep silver robe with small symbols sewn into the cuffs. Delicate, refined, and unmistakably royal. Her fur was pale gray with a soft pattern of stripes like storm clouds. Her eyes were golden and sharp, scanning the gathered crew without pause. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She simply said, "I'm looking for something that belongs to me." Commander Draven stepped forward with a forced smile. "Your Grace, welcome to Unveils Point. How may we assist your search?" The woman tilted her head slightly. "There is no may. You will. I am Salin, daughter of the House of Relenth, and something dear to me vanished along this trade route. I tracked it to your station." Lennon felt a chill rise up his back. He didn't dare move, but the name rang in his ears. Relenth was one of the oldest noble families in the quadrant, known for their power, influence, and more recently, internal conflicts. The guards beside her began scanning the crew. One of them paused when their gaze swept over Lennon but said nothing. Salin didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did. Her eyes briefly flicked toward the medkit on his shoulder. "Do any of you have medical facilities?" she asked, her voice smooth and commanding. Draven nodded. "Only one unit, Your Grace. It's small, a private clinic run by our station medic, Lennon Miles." All eyes turned to Lennon. He straightened up and nodded. "That's me." She stepped toward him, and with every movement the room seemed to grow quieter. "Have you seen anything unusual in the last few days? A creature, perhaps? Injured? Intelligent?" Lennon paused. His throat was dry. "We get travelers through here all the time," he said carefully. "Merchants, smugglers, some bring exotic animals. I've treated a few odd cases. But this one," she said, now only a few feet from him, "would not be just another case. You would know, if you saw it." Their eyes met, and Lennon felt a strange sensation, like a tug behind his ribcage. Her presence was powerful, not because of her title, but something else, something deeper. He held her gaze. "I'll keep an eye out," he said. She studied him for a long moment, then turned away. "We'll be staying until I've completed my search," she announced to the room. "Prepare accordingly." With that, she and her guards disappeared down the corridor. The air felt lighter after she left, but Lennon's heart beat heavier, in his chest. He needed to get back to the clinic, now. Back in the clinic, the creature was still asleep, its breathing even. Lennon checked the vitals and saw progress. Healing was slow, but steady. The scan continued to display strange activity in its brain, patterns that didn't match any known animal. Something else was there. As he leaned over to adjust the scanner, the creature stirred and let out a soft sound, a mix between a hum and a cry. Then something happened. Lennon felt a sudden warmth in his hand. He looked down to see the creature's paw resting lightly on his skin. A rush of emotion hit him, panic, longing, and a clear sense of direction. Not from him, from the creature. It was trying to say something. It wasn't language, not like spoken words, but more like shared feeling, raw and unfiltered. He took a step back, startled. "What are you?" The creature looked at him with tired, golden eyes. Its gaze didn't waver. It knew he had lied, and somehow it forgave him. Later that night, as Lennon sat alone beside the recovery chamber, the clinic door chimed. His heart leapt into his throat. He activated the screen. It was Ceylin. She stood outside with only one guard. "Let me in," she said softly this time. He hesitated, then opened the door. She stepped inside and looked past him to the recovery pod. Her breath caught. "You found him," she whispered. "Tova." Lennon didn't answer. The words settled in the air like a secret. "He's more than a companion," she said. "He's part of me. We're linked in ways science doesn't fully explain. When he was taken, something in me tore open." Lennon finally spoke. "Who hurt him?" Ceylin looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "My enemies. Those who want me out of the way." He stared at the creature, Tova, then back at her. "I want to help," he said, "but I need the truth." She looked at him and after a long pause nodded. "Then I'll tell you everything." The days that followed felt like a blur of quiet intensity. Lennon had never been in a situation like this, hiding a royal companion, tending to wounds that seemed deeper than just skin and bone, and working side by side with a woman who carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders. Ceylin didn't act like the rulers from the stories he had grown up with. She was focused, sharp, and unshakably calm, but there was something behind her eyes, a sadness that never quite faded. Together they took turns monitoring Tova, the creature who had become the center of everything. His condition slowly improved. The burns from the energy blasts were healing. His fur was growing back in patches. More importantly, he was no longer just surviving. He was responding. Tova had started making small sounds when either of them approached, and one evening he even pressed his head against Lennon's chest and purred. It was a soft, vibrating hum that seemed to say thank you in a language more honest than words. Ceylin watched quietly as the scene unfolded, her arms crossed and her lips pressed together, as if holding back tears. Lennon glanced at her, unsure of what to say, but she only nodded. "He trusts you," she said. "He doesn't do that easily." They spent long hours in the clinic, often without speaking. It wasn't uncomfortable, just focused. Ceylin was precise with her hands, gentle, with Tova and surprisingly curious. She asked questions about Lennon's work, about the animals he'd treated over the years, and about the tiny medical tools scattered across his shelves. "You learned all this to help others," she said once. "Even when there's no one watching. That's rare." Lennon shrugged, not knowing how to reply. Helping had always come naturally. He had never thought of it as anything special. As trust grew, so did a quiet connection between them. It started in the simple things, handing off a tool before the other asked, finishing each other's thoughts during treatment, sharing a smile when Tova made a small recovery. Then there were the longer talks, after the lights dimmed and the station quieted. Ceylin told him about her childhood, about growing up under constant pressure, learning diplomacy and leadership when she would have rather studied medicine. "I always wanted to work in a lab," she admitted one night. "But my life was never really mine." Lennon listened, fascinated by the life she described. She wasn't just a noble trying to reclaim a title. She was someone searching for her place just like him. For the first time, he saw her as more than a title or a mission. She was a person, And that changed everything. Trouble, of course, wasn't far behind. One night, while Lennon was asleep on a bench in the clinic's back room, a sharp buzzing woke him. The alert was subtle, coming from the security system he had secretly set up. Someone had tried to access the door. He rushed into the main room, heart racing. Salen was already standing, holding a medical tool like a weapon. "They're looking for us," she said. The screen near the entrance flickered to life, showing 2 station security officers outside. They were armed and scanning the clinic with portable devices. Lennon cursed under his breath. "We don't have much time." "I can move him," Salen said, glancing at Tova. "No," Lennon replied. "He's still too weak. I have a better idea." He quickly led Salen and Tova to a small chamber hidden behind one of the storage walls. It was meant for quarantine cases but had never been used. The shielding in the walls would block scans, and the door could only be opened by voice command. He helped Salen settle Tova onto the padded bench inside. The creature growled softly, but Salen placed her hand on his head and whispered something Lennon couldn't hear. He calmed immediately. "I'll deal with the guards," Lennon said. Before Salen could stop him, he stepped out and returned to the main clinic. A minute later, the doors opened and the officers stepped in. They looked around with suspicious eyes. "Dr. Miles," one said, "we've received a report of unauthorized biological activity in this area. Have you noticed anything unusual?" Lennon shook his head, keeping his voice even. "Just the usual. A few cases of space flu and some minor injuries from cargo accidents, nothing strange." The officers didn't seem convinced, but after scanning the room and finding nothing, they left with a warning. "Report anything out of the ordinary," one of them said. "This station is under close watch." When they were gone, Lennon locked the door again and returned to the hidden chamber. Salen looked up from where she was sitting, her hand still resting on Tova's side. "Thank you," she whispered. Lennon gave a tired smile. "Don't thank me yet. This is just beginning." As the clinic returned to silence, the 3 of them sat together, hidden from the galaxy outside. Tova's breathing was steady. Salen leaned back, her expression unreadable, and Lennon realized that somewhere along the way, this mission had become more than just about survival. It was about trust, about healing, not just for Tova, but for them too. The stars outside the clinic's narrow window looked calm, but Lennon knew better. Auralis Point had been quiet for the last few days, but silence never lasted. The attack had shaken them. Whoever had sent those guards disguised as station personnel wasn't finished. They had come too close, too organized. Lennon had done everything to keep the clinic secure, but even the strongest doors couldn't hold off the rising tide forever. Inside the hidden chamber, Tova was finally able to walk on his own. His fur had mostly grown back, though a scar still marked his side. He no longer winced when he moved. Instead, his golden eyes held a calm focus, always aware, always alert. Salen stayed by his side, speaking softly to him in a language Lennon didn't understand but had come to recognize as more than speech. It was something deeper, older. Salen had made her decision. She was going back to her people, back to the place she had fled. "They need to see me alive," she said. "If they believe I'm dead, the ones behind this will take full control. I have to show them the truth." Lennon knew she was right. She had shared enough of her story now for him to understand the weight she carried. A cousin who had claimed power. Loyal supporters hunted down or silenced. And a people afraid to question a new ruler who acted with force instead of reason. What she hadn't said, but what he sensed clearly, was that the attack on Tova had been more than a warning. It had been bait. They hadn't just tried to remove a royal companion. They had hoped to lure Salen into a trap. And it had nearly worked. Now they had a new plan. Lennon had modified the station's emergency medical shuttle, making it look like an off-world biotransport. Under the appearance of responding to an outbreak, they would enter her homeworld with the authority of the Galactic Health Network, which granted access during emergencies. The virus they carried wasn't real. It was a harmless simulation Lennon had engineered to mimic the early stages of a rare illness. Enough to raise concern, enough to open gates. They left under cover of darkness. The shuttle moved like a shadow between the stars, its course masked by false signals Lennon had learned to craft during his early days as a station tech. Tova sat quietly between them, wearing a simple harness that monitored his vitals and disguised him as a registered support animal. Salen sat in the co-pilot seat, her posture calm, but her eyes never resting. She had traded her silver robe for a dark, simple cloak. Her crown had been left behind, stored away like a memory. As the shuttle neared orbit, their clearance came through. The capital's medical sector accepted the emergency request without question. The disguise held. They landed in the heart of the city under full escort, surrounded by officials who believed they were just doctors responding to a crisis. Lennon could hardly believe the plan was working. But he also knew the hardest part hadn't started yet. Once, inside the palace's medical wing, they made their move. The systems were easy for Lennon to access, especially with Salen guiding him. She knew the codes, the hidden entrances, the names of those still loyal. Within hours they had found enough evidence, records of forged orders, missing royal seals, redirected communications, to expose the lies that had taken hold since Salen disappeared. The final step was to confront the council. It had to be public. It had to be real. The council chamber had changed. Once a place of debate and reason, it now felt like a fortress. Guards stood at every corner. At the center sat the man who had claimed leadership in Salen's absence, her cousin Ranil. He looked surprised when Salen entered, not shocked, just annoyed. "You should have stayed gone," he said calmly. "This world has moved on." Salen didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. Instead, she activated the small device on her wrist, projecting the evidence into the air for all to see. Lennon watched from the side as names, dates, and messages flickered before the room. Murmurs spread among the council. Ranil tried to deny it. He even reached for his guard's weapon, but he was too late. Tova stepped forward then, placing himself between Salen and the threat. His golden eyes glowed as he growled. Not loud, but deep enough to make everyone stop. "I never came to rule with fear," Salen said. "And I won't start now. But I will protect what's mine, my people, my home, and those who stood by me when no one else did." Her words hung in the air, and slowly the guards lowered their weapons. The council didn't speak at first, but one by one they stood. Not to argue, not to fight, but to bow, not out of duty, but respect. Lennon felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had never imagined being part of something like this. He had come from a quiet station, fixing broken wings and healing minor burns. Yet here he was, standing beside someone who had changed his life and perhaps the lives of millions more. Later, as the sun rose over the capital, Salen and Lennon stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. Tova rested at their feet, content and whole again. "You could stay," she said softly. "There's a place for you here." Lennon looked out at the city, then at her. "I don't belong here," he replied. "But maybe that's the point." She smiled. "Then we'll build something new, together." And under the morning light they made a quiet vow, not just to protect what had been lost, but to create something better. A bond not written in blood or law, but in trust, in healing, and in hope among the stars.